Summer is in full swing here in the northern part of the world, and I know that because it is 10:54 in the morning. I've already turned all the fans in the house on, and both of my legs are firmly stuck to my leather computer chair. But despite the slight inconvenience of sticky chairs, summer is absolutely one of my favorite times of year. No matter how old I get or how many years it's been since I was in school, the heat will always make me feel nostalgic about summer vacations as a kid, where I got to watch all of the cartoons I wanted and ride my bike up and down the street like a million times and go swimming and stay up late and everything that comes with not having to go to school. But when I was younger, that excitement for summer vacation was almost always accompanied with just a little bit of anxiety. Well, mostly because I was just like a really anxious kid, but I also remember that there was this overwhelming pressure to make summer vacation the best time of year, to like be having the most fun possible for as long as possible and have the most to talk about in the fall when school was back in, about like what I did over the summer. And now for me as an adult, that pressure still comes through with the nostalgia, and it's often translated into my wanting to just like take time off work, skip town, and just be like, just go on some big epic adventure somewhere far away. And I know I'm not alone in that, because a slightly old but very thorough Gallup poll found that the majority of Americans actually take vacation during the summer, and July is actually the most popular month in the year to travel for vacation. So I'll put a link to those poll results in the show notes so you can check them out. And whether you're traveling to like the other side of the world or just to the other side of your town, there are, of course, so many options for things to do with your summer vacation and so many ways to optimize time and save money and make your trip the best it can be. So if you are like me at all, you're probably really overthinking the whole thing and potentially wasting a lot of good summer relaxing time. This is Overthinking It. I'm Kaylee Fagan. Today we're talking about vacations. In an effort to answer all of my own burning vacation questions and hopefully some of yours, I spoke via Skype with a travel blogger and social media influencer named Ariel Calderon. Ariel offered some great advice for those of us looking to plan the perfect summer vacation during our conversation, but it's not every day that you get to hear from someone who actually makes their living traveling the world and sharing so much of their life on the internet. And she was gracious enough to be really, really candid about some of the aspects of her job and her personal journey that are or were a little bit less picture perfect than her followers might realize. Here's Ariel.
Okay.
And there we go. So, hi, Ariel.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for making the time today. I'd love if we could start, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you become a travel writer?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ariel Calderon, and I guess I kind of started my whole thing on BuzzFeed. I was a staff writer at BuzzFeed. I worked there for 6 years. I kind of went into a lot of different areas while I was there. Everything from normal writing and editing, like general kind of content, like general viral content that you would see, like quizzes and lists and et cetera. So yeah, I started, I guess like how I got into travel writing is kind of an interesting start. I would say my journey at BuzzFeed was an interesting one. I really loved it, and I had so many opportunities and did like all of these amazing things that I just could never be more grateful for. And but there was a time in my life where my whole Instagram, for those who don't know, I started an Instagram. It's called Ariel Says, and I started this in 2015. And when I started it, it probably had around like 115 followers. and it was supposed to be weight loss focused. And I went ahead and wrote about, I had lost like at that point 85 pounds, and I wrote about it on BuzzFeed. And then overnight, my Instagram following went to 30,000 people. And it just continually grew organically that way. And then it was like, I lost 100 pounds, and it became like this bigger thing. And I would just get like, bombarded with questions about like, oh my God, how did you do it? Like, I'm so inspired by your weight loss. Like, tell me more. Like, oh my God, I want to look just like you. And at the time, I truly believed I was doing a good thing. And I was very, quote unquote, happy with my life. And eventually things took a turn for the worse. I realized like how pressured I was by Instagram and just life in general with my weight loss. And every time I would like go outside, I didn't want to be outside. Like, I didn't want to see my friends. I wouldn't go to social events, whatever. It just kind of got bad. I ended up, long story short, like developing an eating disorder, and had to do a lot of different, I had to do a lot of different tools. So I went to therapy. I went to a dietitian. I went to 12-step meetings, all of this stuff. And it was after that, like, that I really started to understand myself of like who I actually am at the core. And I felt like I had lost a piece of myself in the weight loss, because I was just so focused on only looking good and not doing anything else. So once I finally got to a place where like I was no longer binging all of the time, and I just felt like okay with the person that I was and the skin that I'm in. And I booked my flight through this service. It's called Flyglitch, and like an email subscription service, sort of like a Scott's Cheap Flights. And it will email you when a cheap flight is leaving your area, like your destination or your departure airport. So I got an alert for Hawaii to go to Kauai, and it was $370 round trip from New York. And I was like, well, I feel better about myself now, and I'm not like afraid to do things. And I think this would be like an interesting challenge for myself to see how I do both with food and emotions, like everything. It's just like how I do with myself alone in a different setting somewhere else. Because every time I traveled before, I was just worried about what I was going to eat. Like, I went to Japan and I wouldn't eat ramen because I was afraid that it had too many calories or too much sodium. Like, it was crazy. Gosh. Yeah. And so I felt like this trip to Hawaii, this solo trip, would really like make me find myself and see how I'm doing in recovery. So I went and I had the best time. Like, it was crazy because I was alone, just like so far away from everyone. And I don't know, I rented a car and I made my own schedule. I didn't like binge on food. Like, I felt very good about myself. I ate when I needed to and when I wanted to, but I didn't go overboard. And like, I was enjoying the local cuisine and everything. It was just really great. And I had such like an epiphany with myself of being like, life is not just about how you look. It's the things that you can do, the experiences you can have. Like, these are the things you want to share with people, not like, I lost 100 pounds. Like, at the end of the day, that's not like, it didn't make me happy. It was making me conditionally happy. So yeah, it's just, I know it's just like a very long answer for travel, but
no, it's great.
That's kind of how I got into this. And then from there on, I just, between Flyglitch and getting the emails, and just like knowing that I could do a solo trip, I just got very much into travel. And, I kept making trips, and the person who was in charge of editorial at BuzzFeed saw that I had been doing so much travel. And I had actually told her at some point, like, yeah, I would love to, experiment with travel writing, because we don't have a travel section. We don't really do a lot with it besides like, curated lists. And I truly believe that you're going to get so much more if you're based in a place and then you can write about stuff, because Google can only tell you so much. So yeah, I like said that. And then a few months later, I got an email and it was like, hey, would you like to do this program called Remote Year and go live in Latin America for 4 months and write about travel? And I was like, sign me up. And that was it.
Oh my
And then I did
gosh.
Remote Year for 4 months and I lived in Peru, Colombia, and Mexico. And I wrote all about the areas that I was in. And yeah, so that's kind of just how I got into the more like travel sphere of things.
Right. It's so interesting to hear that story from your perspective, just because I've been a follower of yours for a long time, and I think that I started following you not long at all before that first Hawaii trip. Because I remember seeing the posts about it and being like, oh, that's so cool. Because I was going through not exactly a similar situation, but a parallel story about weight loss, and your Instagram was, a source of like, oh, somebody out there did this successfully. And so it's super interesting to hear all of that from your perspective. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. And how has that, like, what has that been like for you to kind of go from weight loss and food writing into travel? What has that meant for you?
I mean, I guess like I'm happier than I was for sure when I was writing about weight loss. And I guess I have like a different perspective on it all now. And I've gotten very into the body positive movement. And I love hearing women speak about their truth. And like, I love going to panels where women are speaking and just, I don't know, I'm very much into this whole idea of like, a swimsuit, like a beach body is like when you're at the beach wearing a swimsuit, like that's
Right.
it, and I appreciate that so much. And it kind of makes me sad when I think about what I used to post about, because I don't want people to see before and after photos and think I'm not worthy if I'm the after photo, or if I'm the before photo, or vice versa, I guess. But yeah, it kind of just made me, it makes me a little sad that I did that, because that stuff ended up being very triggering to me later on. And I had to unfollow so many accounts on Instagram because I just couldn't have that in my life anymore. So I'm glad that I don't really have to do that now. And now I can write about, how can you travel on a budget? How can you, like, what are tips and tricks for finding local food? And how can you like explore something you never thought you would do, or like, oh, there's this place that like no one has heard of, but it's amazing and you should go visit it. So I really enjoy that switch that I've done, and just, helping people explore the world and see what's out there. So
yeah. And from where I'm standing, it's really, really beautiful, honestly, to get to see travel become this total source of positivity for you and for anybody. I mean, that's something that I definitely aspire to. I have done like very little traveling in my life, and that's why I like to live through you on your Instagram account. So that's super helpful for all of us following you too. At the same time, though, I know that like old habits probably die hard. It's probably really easy to overthink a lot of the traveling that you do. And so I'd love to just kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. Lots of us like to live through you and your Instagram, but I wonder, I guess what I'm getting at is, what do you overthink about when you're planning for a new trip, when you're deciding whether or not to go on a new trip, things like that?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of overthinking,
or maybe you don't overthink. Are these? Yeah,
well,
feel free to.
I do. There's something that I overthink about. I have kind of like two answers that are like wildly different.
Perfect. Love it.
I would say like half is, I do tend to think now about my safety. That wasn't really something that I thought too hard about before, but after just like reading so many things and like hearing stories from other women, like I realize how it's not like you shouldn't travel to a place because you're afraid, because in reality, there's danger everywhere you go. It's just how aware you are of the situation, and like, it's just constantly being vigilant. But I would say that kind of thing gives me a lot of anxiety, even just like pickpocketing. Like, I still get anxiety about it because the idea of being separated from my phone is obviously like traumatic, which is so ridiculous. Whatever.
Oh no, I can totally relate to that. I remember in college, at one point I was driving, I was commuting to and from work, and it was like a 2-hour train commute. And one time my phone was broken, and I was like, oh, I can't go to work anymore. Because what if I die on the train? Nobody will know. Like,
that's what it feels
super
like.
Relatable.
Yeah. So that's something that I tend to, I get caught up in that idea sometimes, and I'll be afraid to do things, or like sort of while I'm traveling, in terms of overthinking and that aspect of it. Like, I will be just so worried about like somebody pickpocketing me that I'm not like in the moment of the streets that I'm walking down. I'm too busy like being afraid of my stuff being taken.
Right.
Which I don't know. It's kind of weird, but that is like just something that I deal with, and an anxiety I have. I have a lot of anxiety, which is like super fun.
Well, and super convenient for a person that does so much global travel. I can imagine that it comes up a lot.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, by now, like, I've learned a lot, and just like, I've learned like what other women do, like when they're traveling. Like, I remember I was in Bogota, and I was like on a tour, and it's funny because I had a conversation with this random girl on the tour, just like talking about pickpocketing, because in Colombia it's like famous for pickpocketing, not so much like violent, like what's it called, mugging. It's not that. It's just like, if you leave your phone out, or like it's sticking out of your pocket, someone's going to take it. So we were talking about this idea of like, she was saying what she does is she brings 2 wallets, and one is like a decoy wallet, and it just has like a little bit of cash in it. So like, if she were to get mugged, that's the wallet she would give away.
Right.
And but if like, also if she like sees something suspicious, she might like put that to the top rather than like the bottom of her purse, or like in certain areas of her purse, or who knows. Which I thought was like really interesting idea. This is sort of off topic, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a good tangent.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that whole thing is just interesting to learn about. And then I would say the second thing, which I'm actually kind of ashamed of, but I would say when I overthink, I do, because everything I do now, like I put on Instagram, like that's just kind of how my life has become. And I do make money from Instagram too. So like, I want to have like a nice curated feed, and I tend to overthink like, what am I going to wear when I go to this place? And like, what should I pack? Should I bring a backpack with extra clothes in it so I can change? Like, what earrings should I wear? And it's just like, oh my God, why am I doing this to myself? But at the same time, like, the reality is like, I need to have a nice, beautiful feed and like photos, because at the end of the day, like, I do make some money off of it. And for a person that's laid off right now, like, it's been a saving grace to get money from Instagram, which I know sounds crazy, but whatever, I'm going to take it. So
no, yeah, that's, I mean, totally understandable, but also really relatable. I feel like most people, regardless of, the size of their following or any, revenue that they make from social media, lots of us think about, what is this going to look like when I post about it? What are my posts going to look like? What are my captions going to be? Things like that. That's super relatable. Totally nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is crazy, because like, I do sometimes feel like the Instagram element of traveling is almost like, it's almost like deciding what my itinerary is going to be. And I don't know how to feel about that. It's like, I feel a little guilty that I'm feeding into this whole like Instagram life. And I'm worried that I'm doing the same thing I was with my past Instagram, but with travel. And I don't want to do that. So it's been a weird balance, and I still don't think I'm quite there of like doing it right. I try to get the more like detailed, authentic stuff within my stories, but I don't know. It's definitely interesting. And I would say like an example is that I wanted to go to this one temple in Bali, and I was like, oh yeah, like I've seen all the pictures. Like I always see it posted places. Like I'm going to go to this place. It just looks like an amazing photo, whatever. And I was staying in Ubud, and it's like a 2.5 hour drive from Ubud to this temple. So I got up and left at 7 a.m.
I think I know the photo that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah. So it's like the whole photo is like you're standing in between like two sides of a temple. I don't even know what that would be called. I don't know what the official language is for this, but just like two like pillars almost that are very Bali. And you stand in between it, and there's like a reflection on like, like a water reflection. And it's like, you can see both ways, like flipped, and
it's like mirrored.
The back, it's mirrored, and the background is a volcano. And sometimes you get the volcano in the photo, sometimes you don't because it's high in the clouds. So sometimes it's just clouds though, and it's still beautiful. So anyway, I was like, I'm definitely taking this photo. Like I have no other plans but to take this photo. So I drove, like I got like a driver, went to this place, and the line was 3 hours long for this photo, just for the photo. And there's no like water. It's not like an actual real mirrored reflection. Like there's literally two guys. One guy is sitting down taking your photos, and the other guy is holding an umbrella above them to like keep them from overheating. And the guy taking the photos is literally holding like a small square mirror and putting it directly under the lens of your camera on your phone, and then takes the photo. Yeah. So it's like all a lie. It's like not, I mean, it's
I
still
pulled it up on my
beautiful.
phone. You can't tell.
No.
Like it looks like there's a little pond there or something.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And it's
crazy.
just, it looks amazing and beautiful. I mean, and it was beautiful going to this temple. But the thing is, what makes me sad is like, we spent 2.5 hours driving, 3 hours there, another 2.5 hours back for one photo. And like, we didn't even have time to actually explore the rest of the area of this temple. And it just made me feel like, damn, am I one of those people that just did it for the gram and nothing else? And I did. That's exactly what it was. You can't even fight that it was anything else. So it kind of just made me like sad with myself of like, why am I doing this? But also like, I can't help but want to do it. Like I appreciate really like beautiful photos and nice looking things. Like when I make my food in the morning, like it doesn't matter if I'm posting it or not. Like I will make myself like a beautiful plate. I like style it. I make it symmetrical. Like I do all of these weird things.
Like my inclination, I'm predisposed to be defending you right now, because people like a trip, like I understand the value of like living in the moment and, that whole thing. But I also feel like the photos you take home are a huge part of it. And like, you're going to want to, have a good record of what that was like and what it looked like there. Like the mirror situation is a little iffy, but I totally would defend, the choice to have a lot of attention given to the memories that you take home and the photos and that you share, particularly because this is your, a huge part of your job. Yeah. So that's complicated.
It's interesting, right? It's kind of like a weird, you don't really know how to think about it. You're like, I don't know how to feel. Yeah. But it is interesting. And, I'm still going to do it. Let's be honest. Like I'm not, it's just what I enjoy doing. And I don't want to like not do something just because I feel like pressure from other people to not do it or something weird. But anyway, that was
and then
my
it
long
gets
answer.
Weird. Right. But then it gets weird because now you have like feelings about your own feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you feel guilty, but then you feel weird about feeling guilty. And so I can totally see.
What is happening? emotional roller coaster. Yeah.
Right. I can totally see the overthinking rabbit hole happening there.
Yeah.
I was also going to ask, just because I see you give people advice a lot of the time, or you'll say like something like people have been asking about this. And so I wonder if you have seen any trends, like what are your followers overthinking or worried about in preparation for their own travel?
It's really interesting because when I went to Bali and I posted something like, what questions do you have for me? And like an overwhelming amount of people asked me like how I planned my itinerary for Bali and like if I could share my itinerary. And I just found that so strange because that's not what I expected people to ask me. Like the way that I figure out my itinerary, and people were like, "Do you have an agent?" And I was like, "What? No,
Yeah, like a travel agent.
Travel agents still exist. Like, should I be one? Like, what?"
It could be a new line of work there.
Yeah, well, I'm still laid up, so I can use the money.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Maybe people are just overthinking sort of like the rigid schedule, like you have to do this in one day or something. I'm not really sure how people plan. The way that I plan, I would say, is I always book like my flights and my hotels. That's like the hardest part, is figuring out which Airbnbs and which hotels I want, like for how many nights and in which areas. Like that was the biggest part of planning Bali, I would say. And at the end of the day, I was like, well, I want 2 nights in Nusa Penida, 2 nights in Canggu, and 4 nights in Ubud. And that's what I planned. So once I had those things, I kind of like just walked around and did my thing. Like I didn't really plan like a daily itinerary. Like I didn't know what I was doing the next day unless it was like I had a reservation at a restaurant that I had made weeks ago, because it's that kind of restaurant that you have to. But really that's it. Gosh. Like I didn't make like super far in advance plans. Like I did a flower bath thing, and it's like you're just going in a bath and it's like filled with petals and it's just beautiful. And I got a massage after. And when I did this though, I hadn't found out about it until I was in Bali, and like a girl that I had met on the beach like told me about it, that she had seen it on Facebook. And then I called them and they like had an opening in 2 days. And I was like, okay, can I do it? So I did that. And then like, everyone like loved that place. And they're like, what is this? But it's like, I didn't plan that. It was kind of like, I figured it out when I got there. So I think a lot of people have this tendency to think that they have to plan out the whole itinerary before they get somewhere, as opposed to just like booking like the flights and the hotel. Like that's the only thing that I really have that's solid. The rest, I like figure it out based on how I'm feeling and like what I want to do, what the weather is like, So,
man, this is a wake up call for me. I am absolutely one of those people that's like, okay, I don't know. It's just also because I personally have a control complex and need to have everything under control at all times, because like I am the person who is stressed out about like, what are we going to do day by day? And I think it just comes from like, to be able to defend those people for a minute, it comes from like this place where there's a lot of pressure. Like I'm spending money, A, B, I'm like, in the case of if you're going literally across the world to a place like Bali, like I am traveling this long distance. I feel like I need to cram in all of the experience that I can possibly fit into this set number of days that I'm going to be there, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, but now that I'm saying it all out like that, sounds like a mistake.
Yeah, I think you're just limiting yourself when you do that. And it doesn't help. Like it doesn't help anyone. And I mean, that's kind of the beauty of solo travel too, though, is because when you're traveling with people, you might be with someone who like wants the set itinerary. And when you're by yourself, you can do whatever you want. So it's like, if you literally don't feel well that morning, you're just like, I'll just like maybe go to the beach and just like not do anything else or whatever it might be. Like, who knows what plans you want to do, because everyone's different. But
That's
I would say like,
though.
yeah, I mean, like, I love solo travel. Like, really, I mean, I like to be with people too. It's not like I don't, but I enjoy all aspects of it.
I love that specifically because if you have like everything planned out ahead of time and you wake up and you feel like crap, or you just don't want to be, in and around a bunch of people, or you don't want to go do a touristy thing that you've been planning for weeks, like, and you force yourself to go do that, it totally ruins the experience. And then you feel guilty for not wanting to, and then you have feelings about your feelings, and it's a whole thing. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I would say, so I try to keep it pretty open, and I think that's what people overthink all the time, is that they need to have like everything set. I will say that something that like a tip I guess I have for people is what I do is I find where I want to go. Like, I guess first where I begin is on Instagram, and I'm like searching hashtags. Like, I'll search Bali or like Ubud or whatever. Or like every time, because I also follow a lot of travel accounts and I like a lot of photos from travel accounts, my Discover feed is like very travel related. So I'll just like scroll through and I will bookmark things to like a Bali folder or something, like within Instagram. If you just hold it down, you can save it, and you can save it to a certain folder or whatever you want to do. So I'll save that. And then when I'm actually planning my trip, what I will do is I will go on my phone and go on Google Maps, and I will like type in the location that someone recommended. So like the place where the Celebration of Flowers bath was, it's called Udaya Resorts and Spa. So I would search that, and then I would press save. And when I would save it, you have the option to like heart it or put a star and other things. If you click the one that says new list, I click that, and then I would make like a Bali list. And so I would just add everything to that. So everything that I was like interested in at some point, just like put it in there. So I would have all of that, and then you can download that map to be offline. So if you don't have service while you're exploring, you can still see your map. So like if I was just in an area and I was like, I have 3 hours to kill, I'll just pull up my Google map and see if anything is close by to me. And if it is, like, I'll just go there. That's on like the things that I pinned or whatever you want to say.
Right. That makes sense. And, this is actually something that I'd love to keep talking about for a minute, because that when I was like thinking of things to ask you and thinking of, how we want to, like what I want to focus on this time around, a big question that came up when I was talking to my boyfriend about this, because as I do most things, was whenever I want to go somewhere, I'll be like, hey, we should go to, like, I'll just throw it out. Let's go to like Rome. And he's like, that sounds fine, but I don't know what to do in Rome. Like, and so he doesn't have the travel bug the same way I do, because he's like, I don't know what there is to do in Rome or see in Rome. And I'm like, first of all, you are very uncultured. Second of all, like you find things to do. It's not that you have all the knowledge already. If you did, you wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
So I guess that was one of the things I was planning on asking you, is where do you get ideas for things to do in these places, and oftentimes these far off places that some people have never even heard of? So
I would say actually my biggest resource right now is Facebook, and which is surprising, but it is Facebook. And it's groups. So I'm in like a bunch of travel groups.
Okay.
So my favorite one is Girls Love Travel, and it probably has around like 800,000 members now, all women, and which is amazing because you could be like like it ranges from anything. People will be like, my boyfriend just broke up with me and I need a place to go that's like going to make me like find myself and whatever. And like, you know, like there are 50 women who are like, I've been in the exact same position. Here you go. Here are all my recommendations. So there's stuff like that, but then there's stuff like safety wise, like does anyone know a female driver in this area? And people will give you phone numbers, just stuff that's like really awesome. Like I truly love that group so much. I've gotten so much out of it. So yeah, I would like, what I'll do is I'll go in that group and I'll search like Bali, and like a bunch of posts will come up that like people have posted before. And that's how I also get ideas of like what to do in certain locations. But also just because like people are posting all the time. So stuff will just come into my feed and it's like, it has a lot of likes because it has beautiful photos and people are interested because they've never heard of this place or seen this place. So that's how I actually get so much inspiration and just like figure out what I want to do is because of that group and what people are posting in it. It's just a really good resource. So I have that one. I just joined like, I think it's Women Who Travel, which is the Condé Nast one. And I'm in Travel Community or something, which is by Scott's Cheap Flights. So there's like a few. I'm in like a lot, but I get a lot out of them or just like see locations I've never heard of. But because like one person in this huge group decided to go and post about it, now like a bunch of people are interested. And then you sort of just make it happen if like, you know, it's in your budget and like timeline and realistically you can do it or not.
Right. And which leads pretty beautifully into a conversation about traveling and vacationing on a budget. This is a conversation that I totally would be, you know, super upset with myself if I didn't bring up with you, just because I feel like there are so many people who are like, go all over the place, travel while you're young. And my response to that is always like, with what money? Like, how is that a feasible option for me right now? I am young, I am broke. How do I make that happen? That sounds great. Would love to, but that doesn't seem realistic. And yet you've written articles about how it is realistic. So just like, you don't have to give us your every single,
financial detail.
but like, what's your philosophy on that?
So it's really interesting, but I would say a big part of how I've changed my way of travel, and like, I'm not trying to plug them because I'm honestly not getting paid for this, but I did start using Flyglitch organically, like on my own, like via a friend told me about it. And then I booked my flight to Hawaii and I tagged Flyglitch and they were like, I don't know who you are, but like, here's a code. I was like, okay.
Perfect.
So they gave me a code that I could give to people for $5 off.
Nice.
And I just started doing that. And then like, you know, eventually later they paid me for like an Instagram post and whatnot. But that I would say in like a big part of my travel now is like, that has sort of changed the way I travel. So before it'd be like, I want to go to Greece. Let me like plan a trip to Greece. And then it ends up being, you know, thousands of dollars that like you can tell by. but with this, it's kind of like, if I see a really cheap flight, I'm like, well, at least like I'm saving so much on that. I'll figure the rest out and make myself be cheaper then. But you know, like I got one for Portugal that was like $350. My Bali flight was 600 round trip. And then like Bali itself is so cheap.
Yeah.
It's like, basically like my trip was cheaper than what I would have spent like 7 days in New York, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
You know, I mean, like maybe not like actually, but like almost. Like it was
close enough.
So it's just like, I don't know. It really has changed the way I travel. And I kind of just go around that now because I don't know. I feel like the flight is the biggest expense usually. So if you can get a cheap deal on that, like you can make the rest work, you know, like don't take cabs Ubers, take public transportation and figure it out. Like Google it beforehand when it's in English and when you have service, so you're not like confused.
Right.
You can, if you really need to save money, like go to a local market, just buy some food, like bake some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches if you have to, which I have done. You know, like there are just things that you can do. You don't have to pay for the audio tour. Sometimes there's like an audio app that's like $1 and you can pay for that one instead. Like you just have to look for these things. And it's just really about being smart and prioritizing what you actually want to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've known people who did like went, you know, to Europe and all this stuff, but then when you ask a little bit more about their trip, they're like, "Oh yeah, I camped." Or I stayed in like the sketchiest hostel I could find. And so that, and like, that's their way of making sure everything was going to be affordable. So it's super refreshing to see that you've been on all these trips and that you didn't like, you know, I mean, maybe you ate some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but you didn't like rough it all that hard.
No.
Yeah.
Like I would still go eat like local cuisine, but it's just like sometimes like maybe in the breakfast, like for breakfast, I don't actually need like a whole thing. Like I don't have to go out. I can just eat like some fruit and nuts and you know, whatever it is, like you can find something. Just things along those lines of like, I bring every single time I travel, I bring protein bars with me. Like it's just in case I'm like, I don't have the time or I'm stuck on a hike for a few hours or whatever. I always just have protein bars on me. And it's always helpful. Just in case you need it. So there are things that you can do. It's just, you know, I always try to do, always try to pack in only a carry-on for everything. So I don't have to pay for any checked baggage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which I mostly do. So
that's unfathomable to me. Words are hard.
You can do it. It's more like just know you're not going to have, like, you're going to rewear some clothes.
Right.
It is what it
okay
is.
with that.
That's basically what I do to try to keep my costs down. But I definitely don't like rough it.
Totally.
I'm not like dying on vacation.
Right. To be cognizant of your time, I kind of just wanted to move in a new direction real quick. And that's now that we've looked at kind of the really granular stuff, we've looked at some details, we've talked about how to save some dollars. I'd love if we could kind of just take a step back and look at big picture. As people go into their summer vacations and just this time of year in general, they're really, they're looking to get a good experience out of their vacationing and out of their travel. And so I wonder, like, bottom line for you, what makes a good vacation? What separates a really great experience from one that's just kind of mediocre?
I think it really comes down to figuring out what kind of traveler you are. So if you love like mountains and hiking and like just seeing beautiful sights and the beach and whatever, you're probably more outdoorsy, but maybe you're not going to like love to be in like a huge city for like a week. That is super important, trying to figure out like where, like what's your travel style and what does that mean for like where you're going to actually go and also who you're going to travel with. I would say like try not to travel with someone who is not compatible with you. It's not going to work. I have like,
you'll probably find out real quick.
You do. And man, like I've almost lost friendships over it. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like we just can't travel together, which is fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, we have different travel styles. I would be cognizant about weather. Like maybe don't go to Paris in February and March, which I have done before and like deeply regretted it because it was like snowing but like not the cute snow. It was like, it's like not great. So really researching that before you go somewhere, but also traveling off season to places is great too. If the place itself has like year round good weather, like decent weather, like Portugal is a place you could probably go year round. know who you are, like in what your travel style is and what you actually like, and try not to totally stray away from that, because it's, you better than anyone. And sometimes things in travel don't go as planned and don't go well, and that does suck when that happens. But just kind of embracing it will make you feel better. Like nothing, like if you can't change it, it's not going to help to just like be mad about the situation. And that's happened to me a lot. You just have to kind of like go with the flow and like not be tied up in it.
That's super helpful. That was like some deeply helpful travel advice, but also surprisingly kind of just really beautiful life advice. So thank you for that.
I'm a life coach now. No, I'm not.
I love it. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ariel, again, for making the time today and for gracing us with all of your travel and vacationing wisdom.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
And that is it for today. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it in order to get updates regarding upcoming episodes, which I absolutely encourage, because next time we are going to be examining decisions around college majors, early career choices, career changes, and a lot of other topics that I think are going to be relevant and pertinent for people in their early career, but also people at all stages of their careers and lives. So please join us for that. We will see you next time.